The dip and the rip, as we'll be going over in today's video, the first couple months of this new year of 2025. By the way, Happy New Year's to all the people of cryptocurrency land out there. And in today's video, I want to be going over sort of the likely path, the likely scenario that we're going to see to kind of start off this year, and then what things likely look like as far as February or end of February comes, because there are a couple of major signals on the higher term timeframes that I think are very compelling and probably of interest to people out there in this world. So without further ado, we can start it off right on over here with Bitcoin. Bitcoin looking to open up the year on a bit of at least a short-term bounce. We do see that there is hidden bullish divergence on the daily building right here, and that is not necessarily confirmed as of right now. It will be confirmed with any sort of a daily closure here or higher, and at that point, very likely does beg a little bit of higher price action, on this current bounce. To also round that off, we see that the daily stochastic oscillator is not continuing, but actually having a fresh turn to the upside for the first time in quite some time, and will be having some upside pressure as long as Bitcoin's above 92,800 by today's daily closure, which provides a bit of a buffer right there. So that begs the question, of course, what is a likely target for this bounce? And for that, I would go over here to the daily HPDR and say at least the median on this daily HPDR, which is currently at 96,700. I do think that things could trade a little bit higher than there, which would maybe include, a buffer zone between there and about 97.7, somewhere in that $1,000 range. But that would still be another lower high for Bitcoin here. And as we're getting into in the next chart, I do think that things are likely to get a little more complicated from that, from that point. Of course, things could trade a little bit higher, but here's the thing. Going over the same sort of analysis that we were looking at on yesterday's video, I really want to point out let me just get into it right here. I really want to point out this moving average cross, the red 5 exponential moving average crossing to the downside of that yellow 21 exponential moving average. I've gone through every time that's happened in Bitcoin's history. By the way, all the times when, of course, both major moving averages were above the 55, this green moving average down here. And there's been 18 prior times in CME's history. Every time, literally every time, we have seen at minimum a correction down to the green moving average, which is, again, that 55 exponential moving average. In many cases, does go a little bit lower than that as well, but at minimum, somewhere down around there. Now, the timing of that can be a bit more variable, but first, let me just show you some examples of this. In many cases, when the 5 crosses the 21, you've already actually seen the move down to the 55, like you see right here, and almost right here as well. Same thing over here, same thing over here. Same thing over here, twice actually. And in fact, this one I want to dial in on because if this bounce does carry on a little bit more to the upside, I do think that this actually has a lot of similarities. So, if Bitcoin, just because Bitcoin does have that moving average cross doesn't mean it is destined to go down to the 55, like exactly from that moment, but it will become like a magnet for price action. And I think that if Bitcoin does bounce a little bit more here, you will see something like this. Still, ultimately, another lower high on the bounce could get, quite close to that last local high, which in Bitcoin's case is about $100,000. But assuming that Bitcoin does not, reclaim that high, well, I'd still be looking at something like this. So, that test to the 55 can happen, decently later. I mean, from the time that this one first crossed to the actual test that you get, that's 16 days. But yeah, anyways, I do want to bring up the other only example where we actually see this sort of thing happen, where the 5 crosses the 21 and you get a bounce and then test the 55. This one over here as well, or sort of like a really roundabout way of saying that. I got a good night of sleep last night, but my English languages, my skills, they're waning for sure. But yeah, anyways, going into our current iteration, does that mean that, again, Bitcoin has to come down exactly to 55 or perhaps even a little bit lower from exactly here? No, I mean, again, it could trade a little bit further north. I think at least we'll see like 96.7 or 97.7, somewhere in there. And then the real question is, where does Bitcoin put in that next lower high? Now, I do want to offer up a major invalidation. This is the most obvious thing that could happen that would make me bullish beyond belief. No, very, just generally looking for a big rip higher without any sort of further correction to the downside. And that'd be very obviously back above on a closing basis, 103 right here. Just this last little sort of rejective high before Bitcoin actually coming down over the past couple of weeks. So as long as Bitcoin's below there, I do still look at this as likely to correct lower. Again, it's not that much lower to be fair. Right now, the 55 is at around $89,000. That would probably put spot price action somewhere around 88-ish. So, if Bitcoin does come down around there, I mean, that'd be good enough for me. So, I mean, percentage-wise, it's not a humongous difference from, the current lows already. So I don't think it's like a humongous deal there. But here's the thing. there is, and also as far as targets to the downside goes, not only the 55, but of course the monthly 5 exponential moving average as well here. We typically see Bitcoin reconnect with this moving average each and every month, especially during trending, or actually almost always during trending moves. And anytime that we do not see it actually reconnect, we do see Bitcoin typically trade a bit sideways before it does reconnect, and then you get continuation. So, you can backtest this pretty easily visually yourself. But, this would be a good example over here. Just every period it does reconnect. And when it doesn't, like you see right here, it stalls until it does. At most, you might get 2 periods where it does not reconnect before stalling, but ultimately it becomes like a magnet. So in this case, we see that the monthly 5 exponential is where it is 86, a little bit above $86,000. So anywhere between like 88 to 86 on a pullback, I would look at least a bounce for Bitcoin. And personally, as we go over a little bit later, I do think that that's probably going to be the low. And I think that is going to be a very important low as well. And why is that? Well, let's get into the probably the most fun part of this analysis, or at least in my opinion. Made a quick Twitter post about this as well. And by the way, if you find this content valuable or meaningful, or even if you hate it, consider like and subscribing so that you can get more hateful content in your inbox each and every day. Anyways, in a more sincere tone, I'll bring you over here to the bi-monthly chart for Bitcoin. I didn't check this one out yesterday on yesterday's video, but if I did, I would have brought this up yesterday, and this is very compelling to me. So Bitcoin on the bi-monthly time frame to close out 2024 actually closed above the median. It actually closed above the median on the bi-monthly HPDR. Just like Bitcoin likes to reconnect with the 5 exponential on the monthly time frame, this likes to reconnect whenever you see a reclaim. So I would say there is a very, 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 very high probability that Bitcoin will at minimum test the median before this next bi-monthly period is over. So that would be between now and February. And that median is currently coming in at $114,000. $114,000. I mean, that's a big number. And that's a minimum. That's kind of like a minimum target. So, things could theoretically get more crazy above there. And putting 2 and 2 together, and now I'm getting like really fucking far out in the weeds here. So understand that if you're new to this channel, like I'm not going to put a ton of weight on this. It is quite far out, but I have to imagine that if that criteria is met, the monthly will obviously reclaim the median as well. And at that point, the monthly very likely, not necessarily on the following period, but over the next, 3 to 7 periods. I'm just pulling that out of my ass. I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. It could be very short, could be very long, but very likely to see at least a test somewhere around the top side of the 38.2 level, which by the way is above $160,000. So that's kind of what I'm looking at to start off this year. Again, short-term bounce probably goes a little bit higher, I suspect. But just, be aware that you're still on lower highs as long as you're below about $100,000, especially. So as long as Bitcoin's below $100,000, I would really say that, hey, you very likely do have this correction into the upper 80s. I don't think it's going to go significantly further down below there. I know a lot of people are looking for like 78,000, 80,000. A lot of people actually, okay, maybe not a lot of people, but I certainly have seen a decent amount of people call this cycle high actually already, which I don't see it just yet myself, but obviously I can always be wrong about that, but I just don't see the same thing, I suppose. But yeah, down to the upper 80s, then very likely a nice heroic bounce, you'll know that that bounce is the bounce, so to speak, if Bitcoin can actually reclaim this last lower high, and especially when Bitcoin, or if and when Bitcoin does close above, again, this last rejective high here, which is just below $103,000. At that point, you know, it's probably not going to be exactly a straight line, but very likely Bitcoin does put in, you know, about a $10,000 move there to new all-time highs at 114. I would look at the timing for that to happen before, again, the end of February, or at least before the last day of February, the 28th. And then, you know, can things move higher from there? Sure. I mean, that's a minimum target. Obviously, if Bitcoin, you know, just absolutely fucking exceeds it, then, you know, could easily move to 120, 125, something like that. So yeah, that's where I'll leave things for today's video. A little bit on the short and sweet side, which is good. Oh, I should let people know that we will be having our New Year sale actually next week, starting on Monday. I just think it's like a better time to do it. You know, everyone's like too busy fucking partying right now and shit like that. Not me. I mean, I don't do none of that hooligan stuff myself, but yeah, we'll start it next week when things are a little bit more quiet and a little bit more focused on the new year. And other than that, I want to wish you a happy new year. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Friday. Holy shit, it's Friday. Happy Friday.